Hi, I'm Evelyn Tribole, and welcome to day 3 of the Intuitive Eating series. Today, I'm unpacking one of the most misunderstood and frankly, one of the most scariest principles of intuitive eating, and that's making peace with food. And this is about having unconditional permission to eat. And maybe even just when you hear those words, it terrifies you. I've had so many people say, oh my gosh, if I let myself eat whatever I want to, I would never stop. And I find that that comment is usually a reflection on the amount of deprivation that this person has had, going on diet after diet, food plan after food plan, by whatever name it's called. So I want to give you a couple of pointers, a couple background bits of information on how this principle came about. So what ends up happening is the more you restrict psychologically, when something happens, something comes along and you just can't stand it anymore. It's not just like, I'm gonna have a piece of cake. It ends up becoming more pieces of cake. We end up seeing this phenomenon of the Last Supper eating. And that is, I don't think I'm ever gonna eat this food again. I better get it now while I can and before I change my mind, because tomorrow I start my diet or my plan or whatever it happens to be. We see this over and over and over again. In fact, I've worked with so many clients who it's become part of their ritual when they're starting something new. And we don't have to live this way. And so there's this profound paradox that happens when you have permission to eat. You really get to ask yourself for the first time, do I really want this food? If I eat this food now, will I enjoy it? Is this food satisfying? And do I like how it feels when I finish eating it, whatever that happens to be? And this profound thing ends up happening. It dampens down the intensity and the urgency to eat this food. And this has to do with the psychology. Yesterday, we talked about the biology of honoring your hunger and what happens if you're not getting enough to eat. And now this is the other side of the coin, the psychological aspects. And when I look at this, I often tell my patients, this is another way of looking at this, is the leftovers effect that you see sometimes around the holidays where favorite foods come out. And usually by day 3 or day 4, it's like you're not so interested in them. It's not that you've stopped liking them. It's like, leftovers. And what this really is, it's based around the research of habituation. Habituation has to do with novelty. And that is when we're exposed to something new, it's exciting. And the best description I've ever heard of was from a scientist, a habituation scientist, who described falling in love for the first time. When you hear that person say back to you, I love you, oh my gosh, it's magical, you're floating on air. But now you're in a committed relationship and it's months or years later and this same person says, I love you, and it's nice, but it doesn't have that same feel. So what ends up happening when someone's constantly going on food plans and diets and all these unnecessary restrictions, you don't have that habituation effect. And as a result, food stays exciting and it stays really, really scary. So what's the solution? The solution is introducing these foods back in. And I realized this is the scary step, and it's working through the fear. And I want to really stress, you can go at a pace that's comfortable for you. You can start any way you want to. I've had some patients write down lists of foods, of all the foods that they're terrified of eating. And then we might categorize them into, scary foods, least scary, and in between scary. And then start what feels right. You can start with the least scary to kind of build up some confidence. Or I have had some patients that feel ready. It's just like, I'm all in. And we can start with that. And I'll tell you, it's something that still thrills me, is to watch the delight of what happens with this permission. It turns off this urgency. It turns off the scarcity mentality. And I'll tell you, we all had a collective experience, especially in the United States, of the scarcity mentality with toilet paper when the pandemic hit. Toilet paper was flying off the shelves. You couldn't get it. People were obsessing about it. They were hoarding it. That's what happens with foods when we have more and more food rules. And unless you have a medical condition such as a life-threatening food allergy, let's say to peanuts, or celiac disease, we can bring all these foods in. And yes, I understand that there is a nutritional difference between eating a piece of broccoli versus a green jelly bean. No question. This is about emotional health. This is about removing the morality of eating and removing the anxiety of eating so you can just enjoy and connect. And so when the day that we get to gather with our friends again, which I can't wait, you can enjoy the conversation, you can enjoy the connection and not be stuck in the anxiety about eating a particular food. Because what tends to happen over time, this list of forbidden foods tend to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm so glad you're here. I can't wait to read your comments. And especially for those that have been on this path for a while, I would love for you to drop a comment about some of your most surprising experiences making peace with food. I'll tell you, it delights me. I love watching this over and over again. And I think what it also does, when other people who are newer on this path see these experiences, they recognize it in you in terms of your original fears, and then they got to see that you overcame this. So thanks for being here, and can't wait to see what you write. Thank you.